Talk the walk with every sip and laugh. Coffee's the fuel, martini's the craft. Conversation swirling in the cool night air. Talk the walk, we're going somewhere.
Evening, Leanne.
Good morning, Alan.
Was that a standing ovation? It might have been, huh?
Yeah, the crowd's going wild. There's,
Right.
I mean, I've actually had to mute them because it's still going off. How are you, Alan?
I'm good, Leanne. Things are okay. We just came back from the West Coast, saw our grandchildren out there, and stopped in Phoenix to do a little work. Scottsdale, very nice. How are you doing, the prospective mountain climber here?
Yes. So I recently decided to take on a big challenge, Everest Base Camp and La Bouche Peak in Nepal in November. And so I was training for a half marathon. I've actually just pivoted my training plans and doing a lot more strength, going to be doing a lot more breathing exercises. And you were giving me some advice beforehand about being a bit, what was your advice, Alan?
Well, I told Leanne we got to pre-record several of these, so we have them. No, I'm kidding. What I said was, you're an athlete and you're in very good shape, but you've never climbed a mountain, which is a different kind of activity. And the second thing is, given it's about 14 hours up and down, even with some rest, coming down is as hard as going up. And, you pointed out that some people get careless because they finish the peak and they're coming down, but it's very difficult, very strenuous, very difficult. So I'm sure you'll be fine. But that's admirable what you're trying.
Well, I'm giving it a go, right? And so I think, and I'm doing as much as I can to prepare for it. And the good news is maybe it's not so good news, but there's content out there around how people, their recommendations, what they suggest. At the same time, I also want to be a little bit relaxed about it. So I don't want to read too much into some of the disasters in terms of what goes on. Yeah. And today's topic, well, first of all, we'd love to hear from where you're dialing in from. Have you ever climbed a mountain? Let us know in the comments. Today's topic, looking for business in all of the wrong places. Now, Alan, you suggested this topic. What was it about this that was resonant for you?
Well, there was a country song, I think it's by Bill Lee. His last name is Lee, looking for love in all the wrong places. And I think a lot of professional services providers look for business in all the wrong places. They wonder why they didn't get it. They didn't get it because they shouldn't have been where they were. And so, I've got some ideas here. I'm sure you do too, some suggestions. But for example, we discussed on this show before the fact you have to see economic buyers, because economic buyers can move money irrespective of what the budgets are. So just because somebody's willing to talk to you, that doesn't mean you're in the right place. In fact, I can make a point that the easier it is to talk to someone in a company, the more probable it is they're not a buyer.
Okay, I love that. I think that's such a good point. Because it's easy to market to people that actually have time and are available and want to speak to you. I mean, how exciting is that? So we're going to dive into this. It's very provocative. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, you're drawing the analogy to that song, which is about love. And this is kind of like dating, like the most available people are the most desperate.
You said that, not me.
I did.
The most available people are the most powerless. I think that's how you do it, Sheldon. I think that's the point here. And they fill up their day talking and talking and talking, but to no apparent end. When I started my career in Prudential, I was in human resources, which is probably one reason.
You were in human resources.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
No, well, I don't know that.
Well,
I don't brag about that.
You don't brag about that.
No, it was ridiculous. I mean, one time we had vendors come in to see us. I was the manager of this little human resources unit for one building. And I sat there listening to them, and they had a deck and they were showing slides. I said to myself, why am I even here? Even if I like what they have, I can't buy it. I have no money.
Yeah.
Took up part of the afternoon,
Yeah. Oh, well, this is an interesting fact about you. So Dee Dee is saying hello. I don't know where you are today, Dee Dee, but you're in some exciting places. So Sheldon's joining us from Brisbane as well. So you kind of alluded to this before, talking about if someone is available, maybe they're not the right person to talk to.
Yeah.
What is the wrong place actually mean in today's consulting world? Is it just about buyers, or are there other areas that we can look at?
Well, it's primarily about buyers. 90% is about buyers. I mean, 10% is environmental. Don't try to close a deal or even have a consequential talk over a meal. You can't do it. You can't take notes. There's ambient noise. You don't want to say certain things. So there's environmental issues, but the basic one is interpersonal. There are two basic kinds of buyers. There's a buyer in a corporate environment, and that's an executive. Buyers don't have to be the CEO. Buyers can be director of X, Y, and Z because they have budget. In a bank, everybody has a title, so very few are buyers. This is the vice president of door opening, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other type of buyer is the owner of a business, owner primarily of a closely held business. What drives me crazy is that so many people consider the owner of a small business a CEO. Those are two very different kinds of people. They have different interests, different environments. And so here's a differentiator. When you're dealing with a small business owner who can buy from you, it's a very emotional kind of a sale. This person is wondering, should I invest the money in this professional, or should I save it up for the kid's college education, or for a wedding, or my wife wants to go to Aruba, right? Or my husband wants to go to Aruba and gamble. In a corporate environment, there are personal objectives behind every corporate objective, but no executive is worried about whether the money should go to the consultant or to the kid's college education. Those are two different issues for an executive.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very aware of that. So when you want to look for sales in all the right places, you have to look for the right kind of a buyer. In a nonprofit, it's either the executive director or the president of the board. And use other people only to get you to those people, because if you spend a lot of time with low-level people, when you eventually come up, you're associated with them.
Yeah.
And the higher level people don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, it is like kind of not guilty by association, but almost like that. When you've got that, you talk about brand a lot, but brand is also around your associations and your network and things like that. But I do like that idea of having, because a lot of people that I've sort of attracted into my world have then gone on to introduce me to the right people within their organization. So there is value in that too. We've got a few more people that have joined us. Alan, MK, hello. MK has joined us from sunny Brisbane or Meanjin. Sean is joining us from Utah. And Naz here from
Boston.
What? Boston. Oh, it's such a cool accent.
The other way, it's an hour north. I could probably yell to him from here.
Oh, probably. Yeah, that's right. One thing, we will go back to the economic buyer for sure. When I read this from you, looking for business in all the wrong places, what I thought of was how a lot of us go fishing for business in places like LinkedIn or on social media. And I know you have an opinion around that.
Well, I don't believe social media is a very accurate or worthwhile marketing venture for people who are interested in doing 6-figure projects and 7 figures annually and want to continue with the business through expansion sales and get the right referrals. If you're dealing at lower levels, you're going to get referrals at lower levels. So if you're serious, the book I'm writing now is called 7-Figure Consulting for John Wiley. And the point is that you have to get on the radar screens of these buyers who talk to each other and recommend people to each other. And that's the language you have to speak. Your social proof, your testimonials, all have to be at that level. So you can't look for these kind of major business in places where you're not going to be able to get that. Similarly, you have to have a brand that is of high impact to those kinds of people. In your particular public square where your buyers are, you have to become the equivalent of their household name.
Yeah. Okay. And then the question is always like, how do you do that? But I do have a question, because I was working with you, our very first ever podcast conversation. You said to me, like, Leanne, you're talking to the wrong people, because I was targeting HR learning and development people. Right. And then over, numerous years, to even just step away from that and to start attracting a different market, you really have to do significantly different things. What's your advice for someone that is, listening to this thinking, oh, wow, I'm actually not attracting the right person? What do I need to do to shift that?
Well, look, you're very personable. You're very approachable. You can talk about a lot of things. What you have to do, and what anybody in these positions has to do, is to simply take what you're good at and superimpose it on a higher level person. And that's what I mean. Your social proof changes, your language changes, your frames of reference change. So if you're talking to somebody who, let's just say, owns 5 trucks and does local moving business, you're going to talk to them about the streets and the licensing for the vehicles and so forth. If you're talking to somebody who owns a $30 million national moving business, you're going to talk more about competition from up-and-coming firms. You're going to talk about how you reach out from Sydney to Perth and make yourself well-known in both those, 3,000 miles apart, like New York and San Francisco. And so you just have to adjust a little bit in your thinking. So what you read and what you pick up from your reading has to be reflected on these higher level people.
I actually like that you brought in that Sydney to Perth, across the Nullarbor example, because did you do some work with Lindsay Fox?
Yes, I did.
That up? He's a character.
I did. Lindsay Fox was a kick and a half, and I worked with his people, worked with him, went out on his yacht. We sailed past the Opera House.
Amazing.
He was a no-nonsense guy. I really liked him. And that's what you talk to him about.
Yeah, I really like him too. I think you could talk a lot of things to Lindsay Fox. He is straight down the line. Doug is joining us from Lake Tahoe. Another guy, Brian, is joining us from Boston too. So you've actually got a crowd just down the road from you too. Now, why do smart people say like fishing in the same pond? Like, I guess if I reflect on this question, I think it's got a lot to do with being comfortable, right? Yeah. And also, if someone's available, that makes us feel good, that maybe we're keeping busy can feel good at the same time, like we're making progress.
Well, this book, The Road Less Traveled, the fact is that we like to stay on the well-traveled road because we're comfortable. And that's why we continue with less than optimal kinds of leads and less than optimal kinds of buyers. We've been there, we've done that, we're familiar with it, and we've been a little reticent, a little reluctant to pursue this elsewhere. When we were just in LA seeing the family out there, there was about a 30 or 40 minute drive from the hotel we were staying at. And, California roads are awful. They're just terrible. And one day I'm driving along, we're doing okay. And I noticed these cars passing me. And I said to my wife, oh my God, there's 2 of us. We can go in the HOV lane, high occupancy, I just hadn't thought about it because I was driving alone before that. So we have to, in a world of disruption, we have to create our own disruption and say, why am I seeing these people and not those people? Because we control that.
Yeah. And it's got something, I guess a diagram that you screen shared with me on a call was like that success curve.
The S curve.
The S curve. Can you share that? I think it's such a powerful model when talking about, making that leap and knowing when to do it.
Well, here's my screen sharing. You know what an S curve is, right? So at the bottom of the S curve, you try something new. It's a new offering. It's a new service, whatever it is. And if it's good, you're going to have a nice climb, a very high altitude climb. But eventually, the top of the S levels off to a plateau. If you stay on that plateau because of the laws of entropy, the plateau will erode. I call that the success trap. You're doing well. Before you know it, you're declining. So at the top of the S curve, at the top of it, you leap because you have the momentum. You leap to the bottom of the next S curve. But if you continue along the plateau, you lose your momentum, and now you have a huge gap to make up, and you can't do it well. So Toys R Us goes out of business. FAO Schwarz goes out of business, which were once vibrant, great businesses. But when you make the leap, when you're Amazon, which started as a bookseller, right? Then it's, look at Dyson. It was known for vacuum cleaners, and now they do hair dryers and all kinds of things because they're in the air movement business. So in our businesses, I just put AI on my site, AI, Alan Intelligence on my site, because I realized people had access to my books, people had access to my videos and audio, but have to stay ahead of the curve. And the next is my own private AI.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you demonstrate this as well. And I think when you're jumping that curve, it's a lot about what you just said with Dyson is they decided they were in a different business, right? It's almost like a big identity shift. Like, I'm no longer in this business. I'm actually doing this. And that's the curve that I'm jumping. I want to go back to the first topic that you basically brought up, which is the people that you actually want to talk to are the least likely to meet with you because they have no time, right? So those are competing interests. How do you get time with those people that are so busy that
I'll tell you something. That's a great issue. The way you get time with them, and by the way, and we did something on this earlier, I think, the way you avoid being ghosted by those people, if you do make contact with them, is you have to provide them with so much evidence of your uniqueness and of your value that they can't not follow up with you. And so when I talk to consultants who are interested in either entering the field or starting coaching with me, they say, well, you talk about value-based fees and, maybe that makes sense. Financial. I said, forget financial. It's unethical to charge by a time unit because the client deserves a fast response. Do you want to be known as an unethical consultant? And, CPAs are in this problem and lawyers are in this problem. So you have to say something daring and you have to be unafraid of losing the business. Ironically, the more unafraid you are of losing business, the better chance you have of gaining the business because you're going to say something that this buyer hasn't heard. So if you can show that you're a unique influence with fresh air, they're not breathing their own exhaust, not only will they want to talk to you again, but they will do it rapidly. There'll be no ghosting or delays. But that's up to that's preventive action, and we control that. So don't tell me that servant leadership is the future. It ain't, right? I'll tell you that the future of sales is in evangelism. It's in putting clients together with prospective clients, but it's not feet on the street anymore, and it's not social media.
And what do you do in that conversation to not give away, because a lot of the time you get paid for your advice, right? Which you could just give someone during the first chat. How do you navigate teasing them with the advice that would be useful for them with not giving it all away?
You give them everything. You
give them everything.
It's completely contrarian. Look, I've got 60 books. I have 1,800 contacts a year with my clients, video, audio, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, no matter how much they get from it and start to use it, they know that they're not getting as much as they could get from me directly. And so nobody ever learned to ski by reading a book. And nobody ever learned to really apply value-based fees in the six-figure range with a project by reading my book, Value-Based Fees. They get the hint. It's awareness. And I think counterintuitively, people don't realize that if you want to really attract someone, if you want to fish, you got to have bait on the line. A fish isn't
have bait on the line.
What a delicious hook. I think I'll bite the hook. No fish says that. Fish is smarter than a lot of consultants. So you've got to have bait. So the buyer says, I'll bite. That's attractive. I'll bite.
And are you using these? Have you got the bait out? Let's just say, I know networking isn't your preferred way of building business, but let's just say, Alan, you're out and you meet a CEO of a big pharmaceutical, for example. What's going on in your mind? How do you use the bait with someone that you've just met?
I'd say something like this. Look, let me make a guess. You're investing between $1 billion and $2 billion a year in research. Is that right? Well, that's right. And and that's the United States. Your vulnerability is that only about 10% of the drugs you come up with are going to be approved by the FDA. They're going to have side effects. They're not going to be approved. And then after you get them approved, you get generic competition within 7 years. So, well, that's right. So why don't you buy a generic drug firm so that after your patents expire, you'll still own massive distribution?
Okay. How would, I'm just thinking what you just said there, that is definitely not what I would have said or even thought about saying. I know there's a bit of we've got, varying years and experience and you've been in the game a lot longer. You're Alan Weiss, the rock star of consulting, but to learn that skill of what you just shared, then how do we build that? Is it reading? Is it knowing every industry? What do we do?
It's reading the Wall Street Journal daily. It's being aware of what's going on around you in the environment. For example, what's going on right now with tariffs, right?
Yeah.
This morning it was just revealed that the Chinese have lowered tariffs on car parts, airplane parts, because the Chinese realize they can't build airplanes without U.S. parts. So they've given it already. Yeah.
Interesting.
So the Chinese were going to compete with us, with Boeing and with Airbus, by building their own planes. The trouble is, when the tariffs hit and the Chinese tried to get tough with us, their plane production company was nowhere near filling that gap. Z himself flies around 747. So what you have to do, I'll tell you what. Tell me something about your best expertise in helping a company. What would it be?
I'd say influence.
Influence?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me something. I'm an executive. I say, Leanne, I've heard that you do a lot of work in influence, and I would love for us to be much more influential with our clients. What would you recommend we do just off the top of your head?
I would say, like, how frequently are you sharing? Oh gosh, I would say, what's your relationship like with your best 3 clients? Maybe off the top of my head.
Okay, so I'll give that a B minus.
I would give that a C.
Okay, now I'll tell you what I would say, and I didn't know the topic you'd pick.
Yeah.
Following, Leanne, everybody you meet has a story. The story is either real or it's a little bit fabricated. It's their fantasy.
Mm.
You want to influence people, you have to help them build their story. Now, when I stop there, what would you say?
Amazing.
Yeah. Well,
Tell
no.
me more. Tell me. Yeah, I'd be like, Alan, take my money. No, but seriously, like, this is honestly probably, absolutely my weakness. Is like, I get stuck in thinking I need to perform here and provide value. And like, I know, so what you just said, absolutely, I agree with. I could say, if I had plan that in.
Right.
But
we can't plan. We've got to be spontaneous.
I know. And I don't know if you're listening to this in the comments, like, if like what your skill level is on this too, but I think that is probably your best, what you're so good at, is being able to just land those points in that moment. And that is worth so much, that skill.
And see, when a buyer hears an immediate response, I mean, speed is as important as content. When a buyer hears an immediate response, the buyer says, "Oh my God, we've only been together 5 minutes, and I've just learned something. What would happen if I hired this guy?"
Yes. So you're just giving away your best stuff. You don't even care. You're just like, bang, bang, bang.
I don't care. You know who objects most to people taking that stuff? The people with the weakest brands.
Yes. Agree. Okay. This is so good and helpful. And it's just a reminder of how I need to step this up. I honestly think live streaming is actually a really great way to be in the moment. And so I'm really enjoying just talking to you every couple of weeks. But when you throw me a case study like that, I just, the radar goes up.
Well, what are you going to use from your mountain climbing trip, do you think?
What do you mean?
Well, as social proof, what would you take as an analogy that you would use after your trip, no matter how high you go? With a client, say, I was just climbing a mountain, and here's what I learned that applies to you.
Yeah. Oh, well, things about preparedness, around getting your mindset ready, around, you can do everything right, but if you have the wrong boots, you fail. You know what I mean? Like, just taking care of all the details.
I'm going to use something you used earlier with me.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would probably say, you have to learn to breathe in thin air. Whether you use oxygen or you train yourself in breathing thinner air, you have to be prepared for it. And the problem with today's disruptive and tumultuous economy is that we don't know how to breathe.
That's so good. That's so good. Can your AI do that for me in real time?
Yeah.
In real time, like, just have it like plugged into my headset as I'm.
Well, that's a $50,000 program.
It's 50,000.
Right.
Actually, honestly, can I hire you as my business development manager? I just go, talk to this guy. How funny. Sean, I think I try to please and perform. Alan is a peer, and I'd be trying to impress Alan. I'm with you, Sean. Yeah, it's like we kind of have this like weird pedestal thing that we put people on when we want to impress them, or it's a weird mindset. Do you get that, Alan? You don't put anyone on a pedestal.
No, I mean, I've dealt with industry leaders and powerful people, and to me, it's all a game. It's like a chess game. And I think it's wonderful, because if I don't win, if I'm rejected at that time, in that place with this person, they didn't want to buy services from me. But I isolate that event. It doesn't mean I'm a lousy marketer. And when you try too hard to impress people, it comes right across. Right across. And so you have to sit back, you have to relax. And just because somebody's in a huge office with a $20 million budget and 400 people working for them, that doesn't mean that you're not their peer. You're still their peer. You're sitting there taking their time because they feel the need to talk to you. Build on that.
And I don't know if this is a Leanne thing either, but what I am noticing is that as I get older, my peers are also getting older and getting the roles that are appropriate. Like they have the budget. And, even 5 years ago, those weren't my people. Now it seems my generation are getting those roles. It actually makes it easier for me. I'm just saying that as, I don't know if you've observed that or any other consultants of yours have said that to you, but yeah, that's what's happening for me at the moment as I get older, which is a nice thing.
I find that 90% of the buyers I've ever met are only interested in value. They don't care about your age or your ethnicity or your background. They're just interested in value. And a lot of people put those other pressures on themselves falsely. So that, what you have to understand is that our job is to improve the client's condition. The faster we can demonstrate how their condition is improved after we walk away again, is the fastest route to a sale.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. So on that, I mean, you've just demonstrated that superpower of yours of the speed and just cutting and giving someone immediate value, right? The second you meet them. What advice would you have for someone who's listening to help them focus their attention on the right people and getting into the right rooms?
I think that the best way to get to see the right people is always going to be through referrals. So no cold calling. That doesn't work. No social media. It doesn't work. I mean, high-level buyers don't troll social media, despite what anybody tells you. I think that there are 6 good ways to get to see these people, but the mandatory one would be referrals. And you find out who you can talk to. You said this before. You can stair-step this. Just don't stop along the way and make good friends with one of these people trying to get you upstairs. Just use them to help you get upstairs. Thank them, but use them. I also think you have to be very current on what's going on. We've talked about Chinese airplanes and trucking and so on, climbing mountains. I think you have to be able to talk on a wide variety of subjects because you have to pivot. When you hear the right clue, you have to pivot and you realize you're turning into something that will now carry this forward. And I'll tell you something else. You have to be in that public square I talked about where your ideal buyers are. So whether your strength, your forte is publishing or speaking or networking or whatever, practice it and get good at it. I write books. You don't have to write books. Good idea, but you don't have to. But you have to be out there so people know you're there.
Yeah, I think this year I've been producing a podcast every single day, and people ask me why I do that. It's actually got nothing to do with building an audience. Actually, it's got to do with getting an idea, seeing what's out there, and then trying to bring value into whatever that is. And so, I'll take current events and talk about that. And I think you're right. Like it's more of a training ground versus actually, doing everything because we have to market. Like I think we can do. It's a fun, creative activity as well. Dee Dee shares she met with a new group today. She abandoned the admiration and went straight to value. She closed in 20 minutes. They were, of course I did, Dee Dee, of course. I mean, she's just got beautiful presence as well. But she says all Alan credit for this. I think you can take some credit yourself too. She's a lovely, very charismatic. You've got to meet Dee Dee if you haven't already. Now, Alan, our next Talk the Walk is on at the end of May, 28th of May, your time, 29th of May for coffee time. Any sort of final words for those that have joined us today? So thank you for jumping in and talking the walk with us. Anything else you think might be useful as we wrap this up?
Always thanks for being here because it keeps the both of us on our toes.
Totally.
I really think, though, you can make this choice. You can continue to be comfortable in what you're doing, and you're going to be in that plateau I talked about, or you can jump to the next S curve, and you might be uncomfortable while you're doing that, but longer term, you're going to be glad that you did. That's the only way to get up the mountain.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, it is a really hard, I found it very challenging, but you need reinforcement as well. Hence, getting into your growth cycle, just getting a new peer group around you that can help propel you up there and just show you that, it's okay. You'll be fine. This is normal. Thanks from Dee Dee. Thanks from Sean. Okay. Final question from Dr. Neil McIntyre. I'm from Tifton, Georgia. My challenge is making contact with a true economic buyer. Alan's reputation opens doors that others of us are challenged with. How do we navigate that?
Well, I didn't have a reputation when I started. And everybody writes a first book. Say, oh my God, it's the first book. Well, I had a first book. Every author has a first book, and everybody starts somewhere at the bottom. I didn't start at the top. And so the way you navigate this is you boldly, shamelessly make yourself known for new ideas, IP, and you shamelessly promote. I don't mean that you stand on a corner and, say, I will consult for food or something, but I do think that you have to be bold and original. So I would say to you, Neil, think about what your expertise is and take a contrarian position or a counterintuitive position, back it up with social proof, and get it out there in print, get it out there on video, get it out there on audio, and get yourself heard for that. And if you work at doing that, they will come.
Yeah. Neil, connect with us on LinkedIn. We look forward to seeing what original and bold ideas you start to share after this. Sheldon says, thanks for the book, Alan, Value-Based Fees. It's the first book he's bought when he started consulting. MK says, great session. Thank you both. Alan, I think it's cheers time. Cheers to you. Thanks for today. Thanks for sharing your insight. Thanks for talking the walk.